Hello and welcome to Skills in Automation. My name is Ash and today we are going to look at how to split and merge files using Excel VBA. These are two separate workflows. For the split section, we will check out how to split a report into multiple files, and for the merge section, we will learn how to merge data from a bunch of Excel files into a single data set. But that's not all. Because VBA is a super awesome tool to automate workflows, I'm going to show some extra goodies as well. For the split section, I will share the code to create individual files and then email them out in the same workflow. And for the merge section, we'll check out the code to download attachments directly from Outlook onto a local drive and then merge those files together all within the same code. These are going to be really helpful and time-saving macros. And now let's do a quick demo so that you know what to expect. This is a data set of invoices that we want to split. We will create a separate file for each salesperson in column C and save those files in a folder out here. Let's run this macro. Come to a folder and 5 files have been created, one for each salesperson. We are going to use these same files for the merge section. Our objective is to combine all these files together into a single data set within the merge worksheet over here. The final result will look the same as the split data set, but maybe ordered a bit differently. Let's run the macro, go to our merge sheet, and we have a full data set. And now for the extra part. We will combine our knowledge learned here with a method to send and extract emails. I won't be explaining the extra code here. I have 2 separate videos for that, but you can download the full code from the links for this video. The point is to show how to combine 2 concepts and create an end-to-end automation. Okay, let's demo it. For the split macro, we will split the files based on the salesperson and email a copy to each salesperson based on the email address. This is our Outlook application. The sent folder is currently empty. Let's run a macro. 5 files have been created the same as last time. And let's go to Outlook. We can see 5 emails have been sent with the split file attached. And for the merge macro, we will extract the attachments from each of these emails sitting in our invoices subfolder onto a local folder and then merge them together just like we did before. So our local drive is empty and so is our merge Excel sheet. Let's run our code. The 5 files have been downloaded straight from Outlook and all the data has been merged together in a merge worksheet. Alright, I hope you're excited to learn this cool code. Let's get started. In this section, we'll split the data set from our worksheet out here. Our logic will be to create a unique list of salespersons from column C and then loop over that list, filter the original data set on each salesperson, create an individual file for that salesperson, and then save it in a folder. The main topics that will be covered in this macro are advanced filter and for loop. This is the data set that we want to split. The salesperson is in column C. Let's open our VB editor, Alt F11. Let's create a new module, create a new sub. We'll be using the worksheet names to reference the worksheets and we'll be outputting the files onto this folder. Let's copy the folder path, Control C. We'll create a public constant at the top of our sub so that we can reference to it later. Let's add some code to stop our screen from fluttering and to stop unnecessary alerts. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be using the advanced filter technique, which requires a separate worksheet to place our filters and criteria. We will use this rough worksheet. So let's blank it out before we begin the macro. We'll create a unique list of salespersons from column C and output it onto the rough worksheet into column A. So let's place our header, that's salesperson, in range A1. And we will later run a loop over this unique list. And for each salesperson, we will filter the main data set. This means that the salesperson is now the criteria for the second step. So let's add the salesperson header in column D, which will represent the criteria for the advanced filter. Advanced filter will need 3 ranges: the original dataset, the criteria range, and the range we want to copy the data to. Let's declare range variables for each of them. For creating a unique list though, we just need the dataset or the list range and the copy to range. So let's assign them. So a list range is the main dataset and the copy to range is just the header in the rough worksheet, which is this one right here. And now we can use the advanced filter to create a unique list. Choose filter copy, Since we're creating a unique list, we don't have any criteria. We can just skip that. The copy to range is the range copy to, and we'll set unique to equal to true. Okay, let's see if this works so far. Run the code. Cool, we have a unique list out here. Now we will loop over this unique list. So we need to find the last row. So let's declare a last row variable and assign it the value of the row count of the current region. Declare an iteration variable. Let's declare some more variables. I will explain them as we use them. Okay, gonna make some space here. Let's begin the for loop. So while we're in the loop for each salesperson, let's grab the salesperson name from column A and place it in a criteria range in cell D2. So grab the salesperson name. We'll first clear out the value in cell D2 and place in a salesperson there. So now we can assign a criteria range for the advanced filter, which is the header and the salesperson name. Let's create a new Excel workbook and assign it to our workbook variable out here. Let's assign a worksheet variable to sheet 1 in the new workbook. And let's copy over these headers onto our new workbook. So we're copying over just the first row. And now this top header row in the new workbook will be our copy to range for the advanced filter method. So let's set that range. Okay, so now let's use the advanced filter to filter the data set based on the salesperson in a criteria range and paste the filtered data onto the new worksheet into our copy to range. This time we need a range criteria and the new copy to range, and unique is false, so we don't need to specify it. Okay, so far I'm just going through the steps, but if you're not sure or are unable to visualize what's happening so far, my tip would be to play out each step in the macro. In fact, let's try that out. Let's put a code break on our next iteration and let's run this macro. We can see a new workbook has been opened and the data related to our first salesperson has been copied over. The macro is still in run mode. You could either play it out or just stop it, remove the code break and close the open file. Don't save. Okay, back to our code. So far, we have created a new Excel file. Time now to save it. The file name will be the name of the salesperson concatenated to our folder path. So the file name is equal to the folder path concatenated to the name of the salesperson. And now we can save it. This indicates the .xlsx extension. And let's close this workbook. And finally, let's empty out all the objects that we are going to use in the next iteration of the for loop. And that's it. Let's run the macro. Come to our folder path. 5 files have been created. Great. And that was how to split files. We have just covered a basic scenario. If you want to see more variations, I love building these workflows. So do let me know in the comments. And I had mentioned about sending emails, but we'll cover that in the last section of this video. For now, let's move on to merging files. In this section, we'll look at how to combine data from multiple individual files into a single file. In fact, we are going to look at the same files that we split in the previous section. And please note that the code that we're going to learn today will work on any Excel file as long as the column headers of each file match. We don't need to know what the headers are as long as they match. So the code is going to be dynamic, which is pretty cool. The main topics that will be covered in this macro are the directory function for looping over the files and the range resize and range offset property for copying data without headers. So our folder path will still remain the same. We have the files that we extracted in the split section already in there. Let's create a new module and a new sub. Add in our screen updating and alerts code. We're going to paste in the data into the merge sheet. So let's clear it first. Let's declare some variables for the last row and the workbook that we will use later on, and a file count variable. I will explain this when we get to it. Okay, let's understand the logic of our code now. We are going to eventually use the dir or directory function to loop over each file in our folder. But first, we will use the dir function to return the first file that exists in the folder. Let's declare a file name variable. Call the dir function. It will take in the folder path, and we're looking for any files with the extension .xlsx. So this function will return the first file name it finds in this folder path, And if we call this function again, it will return the next file name and so on until no file name is found. We can perform this logic in a loop. So we will loop over each file until there exists no new file name. We will use a do while loop. So do while this file name doesn't exist. So while we're iterating, the first thing we will do is open the first Excel file. Our goal is to paste the data from our files into a merge sheet, one below the other. So let's inspect the data. It contains the header row and the data rows. If we copy the full data set, including the headers, then we'll end up pasting the header each time into the merge sheet. So that will kind of look something like this, but we just want to paste the header once for the first file. And for the rest of the files, we just want to paste the data rows. So we need to code this logic in. We'll use this file count variable, which is already set to 0. So in the first iteration of the loop, it will be 0. Let's write an if statement. So in the first iteration, that is for the first file, we will copy the current region, which includes the headers, and paste it into our merge sheet. And once this is done, we will change the file count variable to 1 so that this condition does not get triggered again for the next file. So let's change file count to 1. Okay, we'll come back to this else condition at the end. Let's move outside the if statement. Make some space here. First up, let's close the workbook that we had opened up here and empty the workbook object. For the first file, we pasted the data into the first row as indicated by cell A1. But after that, we need to know the next free row to paste our data into. It will be the last use row plus 1. So let's grab that value. So it will be the row count of the current region plus 1. And lastly, we need to grab the next file name so that our loop can continue. Calling the dir function again brings the next file name in that folder. And this time around, we don't need to feed in the file path. Okay, let's go back to this else condition. It will be triggered for every other file after the first file. Now in this case, we want to copy over the current region minus the top row. This is a bit tricky and we'll use the range offset and range resize properties to achieve it. I'm doing a separate video which breaks this method down in detail, but for now, let's talk through as we build out the code. First, let's define the current region, which is just this out here. This range is the full data range, which includes the top header row, but we need the full range minus the top row. So here's what we're going to do. We will move the full range down by one row. This will exclude the top row, but it will have one extra row at the bottom. Let's do that using the offset property. And now we can resize this range to exclude the bottom row using the range.resize property. Let's do that. Moving on to a new row in our code line. For the resize property, we need to define the number of rows and columns in this new range. It will have the same number of rows as the current region, but minus 1. And since the columns remain the same, we don't need to mention it. So we'll grab the row count of this current region, minus 1, onto a new row. Okay, now we can copy and paste it over. So dot copy, and we'll paste this data at the bottom of our merge sheet. And which row we are pasting it into? We are pasting it into the next available row. And that's it. Let's run the code. Let's go to our merge sheet. All the data has been pasted into the merge sheet. And since we're creating it from the same data set as the split data set, we'll just confirm that the row count is the same, which means all the data has been successfully merged in. So we haven't missed any file and we haven't missed any row. Fantastic. Okay, let's take a moment to acknowledge that the range.resize/offset properties were a bit of a mind bender, but that way of doing it is necessary to keep the code dynamic, which means that we are not dependent on the number of columns or the column names as long as they match. Okay, that's it for merging data from several files. Now let's move on to the bonus section where we'll combine what we have learned so far with the technique of sending and reading Outlook emails. The awesomeness of VBA is in the ability to perform different tasks in one single click of a button, or in other words, in one single macro flow. So let's push what we have learned so far even further. We are not going to do any more coding. I've already built the code for what we are about to see. This is just going to be a code walkthrough. All the code is available to download from the links in the description, and I also have videos explaining how to send and read Outlook emails. Okay, let's start with the split files macro. We did a split on the salesperson in column C. Now let's email the file out to each salesperson. We have the email IDs in the email sheet over here. So while we're looping over the unique list of salespersons in a rough worksheet, we will have to perform two additional tasks. Once we have saved the file, we will first look up the email address of the salesperson based on their name, and then we'll send out an email to that salesperson with the file attached. I have built two extra subs, or rather a function and a sub. The email function takes the name of the salesperson as a parameter and returns the email ID back into the email ID variable, and the send email sub procedure takes that email ID and the full file name as a parameter and sends out an email via Outlook with the file name attached. And that's it. These two small little additions will make this workflow even better. And you can find the code for the sub and function in this module out here. So here's the find email ID function, and here is sub procedure to send out the emails. Okay, let's run this macro. We can go to our Outlook folder and see all the emails in our sent folder. Let's move on to the merge macro. I have placed the emails that we sent out into the invoices subfolder within our inbox. We will loop over the emails and download each attachment into a folder on our local drive. And then we will run the merge files macro that we had built earlier to pick up the data from each file here and collate it into a merge sheet. Let's have a look at the code. This time we will perform two separate steps. One to download the attachments and the other to merge the file. I have a video which shows how to build this reading directly from Outlook part. And you can find the code for this sub procedure over here. So our merge sheet is blank and a folder on a local drive is empty. Let's run this macro. All the files have been downloaded and the data has been merged together just like we saw in the demo. Okay, let's wrap up this video. In this video, we saw how to split a data set into multiple files and combine multiple files into a single data set. I hope you found this interesting. If you wish to see any more permutations and combinations of these two techniques, please do let me know in the comments. And that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.